So we'll get a little scrubber out. Maybe I haven't got it here. And you can use, if you've got one like this, or if you've got one, a little 1/4 inch one, like this. Yep,
Oh, you got one.
either of those, yep. Thank you, Trish. So you've all got one of these, so I'll start with one of these. Clean tissue, clean water, really wet brush. Like, look, see how wet it is? So we'll go straight in with that. I'll start, I'm going to soften this line here where that grey comes up, because we know that that's a beautiful soft edge petal coming in, and it's on the left hand side. So I'm just going to go in there, clean water, wet brush, and I'm just going to go in there and just pick up. I'm just touching the edge of that to pick up that hard edge. I'm not putting too much pressure on it because it just comes off quite easily. And then I'll just lay my tissue on it. And it takes off the hard edge. So that's one tidying thing. So if you go to, yes?
Is that petal not turned over?
That petal is turning over from here and round to
turning
there.
back into yeah, that's what I thought.
That's what you thought? Yeah. So we'll deal with the top of that too, and put a little roll onto it a little bit later. So whilst I've got the scrubby in my hand, I'm going to tidy up this bit here. So I haven't got a reference image here, but this looks raggy, and I know that this will be a nice clean white edge of this petal here. So I'm just going to get rid of those filled out bits there and just pat it dry. So that's what I do when I've got raggy bits where I want it to be smooth, like here, for instance. Oh, thanks, Marilyn. Just think about where the light's coming from, which bits it's going to hit. So that's one tidying up thing to do. And you can do that to a dark edge, like here. So say I thought, oh, I've got a little bit of a whoopsie there. So what I do here is I'll go in really wet, like so. And then I'll leave the water there.
Okay.
I'm not going to blot it,
Because you'll lift it if you do.
because it'll all come off and I'll end up with a light bit. So I just want that to redistribute itself. So these little brushes are great for doing those sorts of tidying up bits. Here's a little messy bit here. So I'll just tidy it up and soften that edge up and around there. So you just catch the edge of the colour. Take off those hard edges. Okay, so that's one sort of tidying. I'm not sure what happens with that petal there. Oh, it's got a little tucky bit in there. So you can choose to do that or not. What else do I need to do in there? Can anyone tell me?
You put a bit of depth in here, don't you?
Yeah, so let's do that. So I'll just use some yellow, and I'll mix it with my blue to get my green. I've already got some on there, and you probably have too. So I can do this wet on dry or wet on wet. So I have more control with wet on dry. So for in here, I'm going to go wet on dry. I'm going to use a smaller brush with a point, and I'm going to go, I'll dilute it a little bit because I don't want it as dark as that. And I'm just going to go in there and just create that dimension. Because it's a small space, I'm going to
Wet on dry.
wet on dry. And I'm going to come out to here. Now I've gone in with a wetter brush, so it's kind of blossoming back in there, so I'm going back over that bit. Then I'm just going to go in like this, or I could use a bigger brush and soften that edge out to there. But I want this to come back a bit further too, so I'll use a little bit more of that green. And then just wash it back out and just lift it out there. See what I've done? So that's wet on dry and going out to wet on wet. But be careful when you put the water into a wet on dry that your brush isn't too wet, because it pushes, the water will push its way back in. Yeah, so that's what happened there.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I thought, do I need to fix that? Not so sure. So see, this is blossoming back in there because I've done exactly what I said. So I'll just go back in there and I'll do that again. And just drop a bit more paint in there because my wet balance wasn't right. And it's good that that happens because you can see that it's just part and parcel of it. It's just what do you do with that. And I don't want a hard line there. So here's a dryish brush, so I'll just pull that back out into here. So now this bit's wetter than that bit. So it's not, the water's not going to push back in. Okay? So that happens all the time with watercolour. You just have to balance that wet. So now I'm going to do a nice sweep around here of the green. I want to create the sense of curve. I want that stalk to feel a bit more curvy. Go back in, quite dry brush, and just soften that edge. So that floats up there, and soften that down the middle, so it floats out into the middle. And if it blossoms a little bit and you get a bit of texture, it doesn't matter in this situation, then I think, okay, I like a little bit more colour around there, so I'll just go around there and drop a bit more in. And because it's wet up there and it's wet down there, it'll just mix and mingle a little bit. Just tidy that bit up and leave that. So see how that's given it more dimension, hasn't it? So you can just work your way around the painting like that. Now this bit here, everybody's in various stages of that, but this is like a roll of petal in the middle, and I want it to stand forward of this back bit. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to use a bigger brush, and I'm going to darken the back. I'll go this side first. Make sure I didn't put my hand in anything. So I'm going to put more yellow in there maybe. So I'm using quite a strong colour. So I'm going to come up carefully there and carefully there, like so, and go right down there, like that, and then in with my bigger brush, which is loaded up with blue over there, and I'm going to soften this edge. Just catch the edge and let that float out there, like so. Give it a little tip. And then just give it a couple of seconds to go off a little bit. Dry your brush off a little bit more, and then just catch this edge and go down there, so that it and you want to use a very only just damp brush to do this, because if I put a wet brush on, and I'll do it and show you, so if I do a wet brush on it, then it's going to push into that and push that pigment away. So you know, this is quite wet here. Now you watch what happens. The water will push it away. The water that I just put on will push that dark line out of where I put it. So you're just wanting to just with a dried off brush, just run down that edge. So if that happens, you can
What
just
are you doing that to tidy this edge here?
tidy the
on the
edge,
green?
but push this back and push this forward. So when I soften that edge, I'll come up here again. I'll do the same thing again over the top. I'll use a bigger brush, and it's a good idea to use the biggest brush you can for this job. So here I'm just catching that edge. See how I'm laying down lots of water out to the side like that, and so that we'll let it go out and not form a hard edge. Tidy that up. And you can go in and do that if you want, if you go onto a white space, but be careful that you don't create a hard edge with that. Now see that how that's wet, so that's going along there. So nearly dry. I'll come back down there and soften that edge again. Quite a bit of pressure. Dry it off. That way. So this will continue to creep round a little bit. Create a sense of round. Okay, shall I do it on the other side too for you?
This is where we spend a lot of time because we don't notice that we've got to experiment.
Yeah.
Whereas you already know, and it's two
Exactly.
shakes for you.
Well, that's why I'm doing it.
easy.
That's why I'm making the mistake or putting too much water on to show you what to do when that happens. Because there's always a way around it. Sometimes the best thing is just to let it dry and then have another go at it. But so here I'm going in here, tidy edge to here, tidy edge up there like that. So that's wet on dry. Go on with a big brush. Not too wet. Plenty of brush on. See how I'm pressing it on the paper. So that can then travel all the way out there. Then I'll give it a minute. And did you see what I just did then? Like this. I want a really dry brush. So sometimes I'll squeeze it in a tissue, but that sometimes makes it too dry. But if I think, oh, it's pretty dry, then sometimes I'll just pull that little bit of water off with my finger and then run that, just catching the tip. Plenty of width so that I'm wetting out here by pressing on the brush, but see how little I'm touching with the tip? And if I go too far into there, I'm going to lift that colour off. And if my brush is too wet, it's going to flood it. Now, so see here, now this is just wrapping around quite nicely there. And you see that little feathering out there? If I don't want that feathering, I just tip it like this. And the feathering will go downhill.
Okay.
So that tipping action is very useful. So see how that's pushed that back? But now I look at it and I think, oh, I've got a bit of a halo there. See, I've got a bit of a strong line going up there, so I think, well, actually, I don't think I quite like as much green there. So I'm going to take a real walk on the wild side here and do what you might think, oh, let's do that, and let's see what happens. So I'm going to lift off some colour. So then I'm going to get a blossom in there.
Wet the whole lot.
So I've got to wet the whole lot. Yeah.
I'm learning.
See that? Can you see what's happening there?
Yeah.
So if that happens to you, wet the whole lot. So I'll go back in, I'll do it again. And I mean, you don't want to have to do things over and over again. I'm just showing you, so if this happens, you've got too much water here, not enough water there. So even it up, so go back in here again, pull it up here. And just sometimes just a little light wash like that will do the trick. And then make sure that it's wet right out here, because it will keep running. And I've seen on quite a few pieces of paper in this room that you've wetted out so far, thinking that's plenty distance, and you go back and look at it and you think, how did it get all the way out there? And why did it stop there? It stopped because that's where the wet stopped. Because it will just keep on going, and imperceptibly to us, it will probably, pigment will go all the way there. So that's how you push something back, is darken it behind. And you see, this is way too not dark enough, so I'll do the same thing, but I'll use a big brush this time. I'm going to push that right back just by doing exactly the same thing again. Tight to that edge. I'll just take that down there. And because that is darker down there, it'll be fine in terms of the colour change. It's darker there, so this will be darker too. And then I'll just go in there with that and check it out. And if I get some blooms and bits and pieces in the background like that, that's absolutely fine, because it just creates a texture. So see, I'm wetting all the way up to there. So see how that soft, that lightness is insignificant now, whereas if it was hard edged it would be much more obvious. But it's made that flower come forward and it's made the background go back. So when you're finishing a painting like this, then that's the kind of thing that I do. Now I look at that and I think, oh well, why didn't I put some of that colour there? So I still could. And orange is a gorgeous colour to put in with what could be shadows or backgrounds, and we'll just mix up a bit of purple quickly and drop it into the bottom there. Just to flow that look through is what I'm thinking. So I'll just go wet on dry, just redefine that edge nicely. And I'm going to do this deliberately with the orange. See how that green's drying? And I'm going to drop in some more orange here, just to tie that all in with that. The background. And if it goes raggy and blossomy there, I'm quite happy with it, and it will, but I'll just keep that edge tidy. And if I don't like that, and I didn't show you this last week and I should do, so I'll just pick that up. there, a bit of tissue out there. Who was it that I sprayed this? Was it you?
Me.
Trish? It was you? So what you can do, if you think, oh, I want to spray this, but I don't want it to get it on my flower, you can just do this. Oh, I think my mist is on your table, is it, Karen? I'll use this one. So it's not going to go on my flower. It's just going to go on the background. You can mark, you can take that off so it doesn't do the edge. Doesn't spray on the flower and muck up the edge so much. So see what I've done there? But I really like all these kind of funny edges and
Bloomy bits
in the background. And I deliberately try and put them there because it makes it much more interesting than just a flat, smooth background.
Well, it looks like other plants in the background, doesn't it? Shadows and things.
Would you do the same process for that background area that you've just done there?
Yeah.
Wet on wet? Like
Yes, you could do it wet on wet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I just defined that edge nicely, and I've kind of mucked that up a little bit. So I'll just go on with a nearly dry brush. It's got a little bit of orange on it, but I've wiped it off just to tidy that edge. So I'm happy that I've got those colours at the bottom all sort of feeling a bit more right. So this is what you do when you're heading towards the end of a painting. And for the top, for those of you who haven't finished the top, basically you just want to repeat this colour but fade it out. And some of you have got lovely light tops. Yeah, Karen, I really like the effect there. This is nice. I think I'd probably pull a little bit of something a little bit darker through just and let it wash up.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm just going to wet it. This is a big brush that I'm trialling from Rosemary's. Got an amazing point on it. Work around there.
Amazing brush. What is that, the 30, Deb?
This is the 30. It's the brush that's for somebody Weaver, and it's a synthetic brush, but it's a 30, so it's big and it holds lots of water, but it's got an amazing point on it, and it's $60 or something as opposed to
120 or something.
yeah, 150 odd the other one. So I've just wet that, so I'll just pick up some of this. There's some orange there. So see how there's orange there? I'm just going to drop in a bit of orange here. And I'll put a little bit of that purpley colour too because it's there and this isn't going to be quite dark enough. So I want that to be a nice tidy edge. And just, I'll tip it back that way. It's not a very tidy edge, is it? So I'll tip it that way and it's going to need a whole lot more orange, isn't it? So you can just drop it in. And remember it's going to lighten. And then over here, same, I'll just pick up some of that purple here. So I quite like the concept of a colour coming past the other edge of the object. Yes. Just a little bit. And then maybe I'll put some green in up there. And some yellow. I haven't got much yellow going on there. That'll do. And here's the yellow coming out the other side of that object. And see how the water's the same as what you did with your background. Your sky and sea, it's exactly the same thing, but we're just using it for the background. So I need to add some more water because it stopped moving. So see how the colours are coming up? They're still a bit light. I think that's going to need some more purple in there. And then smooth edge. And this edge here, I'll show you what I'm going to do with that. I'm going to make that a fuzzy edge. So I'm just painting around those little wicky bits there. And I'll come in with some orange. Just because it's a nice kind of lively colour, isn't it? And there. They're cute, those little reggy bits, aren't they? Need a bit more green, do you think?
No,
No more green? What else do I need to put in there?
it's up to you. I mean, I think it's green enough.
I think green's right. It's just, it's going lighter. Already
It will go lighter, so you see
background.
what I'm doing here and see what's happening with the colours?
Lovely.
If you want it to intensify down on the line, just tip it back down there.
Maybe that purpley colour up the top.
Just get it
Now
to
see
a
this
taper.
purpley, see this edge here? I want to push that back. And I do this a lot with background, so I'm going to create what you call a lost edge there. You know, lost and found edges? So I'm going to go on this side of it, not on this flower, but on that bit there, and I'm just going to soften that edge. Same process, exactly the same as what I did to soften the edge. So that background colour will just drift across there. Same thing though, I need to wet it a wee way, so if it drifts and stops, it doesn't stop at a line. So see how that softened that edge?
So why do you want that to be sort of drifting there when that's obviously a leaf or part of the plant?
Because it's further away, and I don't want your eye to, so your eye is drawn to sharp edges and high contrast, dark to light or sharp edges, or both.
Right.
So if you want to draw the person's eye that's looking at your artwork to a certain point, that's where you have the greatest contrast and the sharpest edges. And if you don't want them to look at something, soften the edges and push it out. So that's one way of softening that edge. And then the other way of doing it is after you've finished, after it's dried. So for instance, I'll decide that I want to soften this edge here on this one, because I've decided it's leaning backwards and it's further back. So I'm just going to wet that edge like that. And I'll go in with my little wet brush, my little scrubby brush, or I could use this one. I'll use this one this time. And just go along the edge, just catching the edge. And see, I'm not scrubbing it off so much as tapping it, and it's not moving much. But often when you do that, it just softens that edge. And the other thing you can do to soften an edge, this is a dry edge here, I think. Yep, that's a dry edge here. Is just brush over it, just a single stroke, or you can be really wild and go a second time. And then go in with either a little scrubbing brush or a little brush like that, and just tease it. Just tease the colour, and don't lift it off, like I didn't lift it off there. See how it's blurring that edge a little bit? So that's about sharpening edges, creating sharp edges, an edge and push it back, and a lost edge.
Would you put some of that blue or purple up the top there?
Blue up here?
Yeah,
Would you like
where
me
you've
to?
got that where the oranges.
Here?
Up the top.
Up the top? I quite like the light at the top. I'll just put a little more purple here. And often, when I get to this point, if I've got some darks there, and this is the first layer, I'll put a little drop of water. I'll put a little drop of water here so you can really see what happens. Give it a little tip, but not too much. And it just, I don't know, to me it's kind of a bit of magic. There you go. So I'll put a drop of water in there and it's drying. And it just creates a texture.
I try to paint things right in the first place, but you only had the colours here, and look how much it's bled, because then I'm way off on something else. It's all happening
Much it grows.
after, you know. You didn't get it there and then, you
No,
left that.
yeah,
And-
that's
and
letting
it's
the
just-
water do the work.
Yeah, and just having trust that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Just
leave
it alone, eh? Yeah, well,
Well,
yes.
Well,
But
see,
that should, because we're standing here, you can see how much that's
yeah,
gone and
but you
done.
have to, with water, you have to wait and let it do it in terms of, so look at it now. See how much more interesting this is now? So I dropped some water in there, I dropped some dark in there, but I'm getting a really nice kind of interesting texture, which will diminish as it dries, but it's enough cohesiveness that it ties it in with this. So I think with yours, Karen, I just add a few little bits of dark in a couple of places, maybe just there, and just let it drift out into clean water. because you want to feel as if it's connected, not just something completely
yeah.
separate. Okay, so I'll just run over those things again. So use your scrubber brush to tidy edges like here. If you've got some raggy bits, it's amazing what it'll take off. And if you've done an edge, so like for example here, see how that's a little bit, can you see it's a wee bit raggy there? The edge of it is a wee bit raggy. So if you go in, it's all wet over here, so I'm just going to go in from a distance. You go in with a little brush like this, when it's completely dry, even if you smudged it when you were doing it, and it went right over, and then you use a nice
But
flat,
the brush is damp,
or very wet,
very wet.
and lift it off, and that's tidied that edge up. So you better, if you make a mistake when you're doing it and it goes a bit raggy, so like see here, see there,
So you know
I'll
we
leave that
to dry.
until it's completely dry,
Yeah.
and then I'll just lift
And
it
that
off like
one
that.
there too, the raggy little bit there, that would have to wait till it's dry too.
Yes, but that's raggy because I made it raggy.
Oh, okay.
I went, remember I wetted and I went
Oh,
out
that's
there.
right, you did too.
Yeah, but if I decided I didn't like it afterwards, then when it's dry I can tidy it up
Yeah.
again.
And then these where you've got water lines,
Mhm.
that we
have to
did.
wet it and bring it back.
Well,
back
this
in that
to
way.
me, this
Or you-
piece here needs that dark sweep again.
Oh, I don't know, it's just that where you've got your
It's
water
yeah.
line.
But a dark sweep over the top will cover that, you see, and it will wet it. So see here, I think it needs this to give it some shape. So it's completely covered up that water line, and it will soften it and make it move.
But if you didn't want to darken it, you could just damp brush and just brush it,
Yes,
and it'll
exactly.
wash it in.
Yeah.
But I do want to darken that because I
Yeah.
want this to come out further than that. I might just leave that like that, and then I'll soften it when it's finished. So it's just all about creating edges. Now see how that's gone a bit raggy there? I quite like that. You know, don't want it to be too tickety-boo and perfect. It's a painting, it's not a photograph. So you can just make a call on those sorts of things. And because I've gone in there, I'll just bring that line, I'll carry that green, but not too dark green. Very green, is it? Up here. Now, I'm at risk of pushing a bloom into there. Let's see what happens. So I want that to be nice and clean. Then nearly dry brush, like this, and I'll just pick it up. Because remember, you can lift colour off too, but you've got to have a drier brush to lift it off. So lifting.
Brain hurts.
The brain. It's just all the different ways we can use a brush, and this is all about edges. So when you're finishing a painting, it's all about edges. And so this painting here, yesterday, I was nearly at the end, and I won't do it on here because this is, we've got really strong darks and really light lights next to each other. But on this one, this is what I did with that. Now that's not perfectly clean water, but this is what you do. Go over the whole thing like this with clean water. Just a stroke. Just,
Wow.
do you know what I mean? So where you've got soft colours blending, you can do that. And even here,
Does that just blend the colours more?
it just softens the edges. And then you can look at it and think, do I need to give it something, a little acrylic brush like that? Do I need to give anything a wee tickle now? See down here, there's a bit of a bright yellow edge. Can you see that sort of hard edge there? I'm okay with the colour differences there because I've done exactly what I did there, here, but I've got a bit of a hard edge, so I'll just go in there and do this. And it's all wet all around it, and that pigment will just float off. So where you've got a hard edge like that, so that you can see how wet that is. And it unifies the pieces, it unifies the shapes.
Do you have to wet the whole thing, or will you get a bloom?
I
where
will
the
get a
water
bloom
ends?
there because my water wasn't particularly clean that I used. But yes, but if you're going to wet the whole thing, I don't want to go over that edge because I've got a nice clean edge there. So yes, I would, Carol, that's a very good question. But don't be afraid to wet things when they're completely dry. But if I did that when it was half dry, I'd have a real mess. So it's the next day thing, or it's been sitting out in the sun for an hour thing, not when it's slightly damp. And the other thing I was going to show you was this little top edge here. I'll show you on this one, which I've already done, because this is still wet. And if I wet that top edge, it's going to go poof out into it. So if you want to get that edge to roll so that it looks as if it's coming out this way, and I've got water here. So I just wet to this edge here, really nice clean edge. There, and then pick up a grey, so that's a bit of burnt sienna and the blue, you know, just one of these colours that we've got here. So when you're only using 3 colours, it's really easy to mix your colours, isn't it? You don't have to think, oh crikey, you know, and especially when you get to the end of a painting, you've got all this stuff.
Great.
And I'm sorry I've made you go from painting to do different things, so you don't always have that. But so then I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to define that edge with that and let it float out. So I haven't wet it quite enough here, have I? Can you see there? So there I've wetted enough, but there I haven't. So I'll just go back in. And so that will make that feel as if it's doing that. Enough to think about?
More than.
So has anybody got any more to tidy up on their colours than that?
An awful lot.
But you can see how to do it. You know, just look at each bit and think, is it messy? Is it tidy? Do I want the edge to disappear? Do I want it to come forward? And that's how you use your little scrubby brush or a little synthetic brush, and with water or with a dry edge, you know, just different ways of doing it. Okay?
Yeah.
Great.
So I think get out your colours and just go over it, and I'll come around and have a look, and we'll just talk about the things that you want to do to tidy or finish. And to me, this is the kind of last thing you do on any painting.
Yeah, yeah. Will we have time to do the bird's little feet?
Yes.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think just have 10 minutes to do this, to do your colours, and then I'll do the bird's feet and eyes for you so you can carry on. Just sit with you. Ah, so where would you like to not have an edge? Is it a little bit illustratory?
Yes, I wanted to make it sharper to bring it forward, but now when I can continue,
But, but that's really good that you're thinking this is too sharp or this is, do you know what I mean? Because you're thinking, do I want a soft edge, do I want a hard edge? Whereas before, you were thinking, okay, I just want to define my edges.
because I think this rolled over nicely.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
And with this turn around, so it's edgy, but is it alright to be edgy, or
Yes.
would you change? What would you change?
I think I would do a few things just so you know what to do if you want to. Do you know what I mean? So think about the shapes of the flowers and the pieces that are closest to you. I want to is the sharpest edges. So I think about the backside of this flower, for instance. I think about this edge, solid, something. It's not too bad. It's not too bad.